So what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Miller, and we have an exciting new series coming out for you. This series is all about taking the newcomer in the recovery living programs and hooking them up with an alumni, somebody who's graduated from the recovery living program. And the reason why I felt like this was so important to implement into our program is because I've sat in so many meetings, and I've sat in so many house meetings, and I've lived with so many different roommates, and I've always heard this phrase, the newcomer is the most important person at a meeting. And you know, it hit me like the newcomer is the most important person in the house, because this is the person that's coming in beaten, battered, and broken, that's still sick, or just don't understand nothing that's going on. And if I can take that and I can put it with somebody who come from that, then the only person that can really help the newcomer is if somebody has the lived experience, right? Our greatest asset I hold today is the wreckage of my past and my experiences. So the greatest asset a newcomer can give is somebody's experience through the program.
My name is Paul Michael Baker. My sobriety date is December 20th, 2024.
My name is Cameron Saito, and my sobriety date's January 26, 2022. So what was your first week like in the house?
My first week, I was nervous. I really was unfamiliar with the area, so I didn't know what to expect going in. You know, my original thought was everybody was going to be in a foul mood. Yeah. That no one wanted to be there, everybody's coming off of something, we're all not going to get along. We're going to be a very angry house.
Yeah.
And then to come in and actually see how everybody was unifying and getting along, and if you have a problem, come to us. And the biggest saying that I was taught within the first 24 hours was closed mouths don't get fed. And that's basically, if you need help with something, say something.
Yeah.
You know, and that I really appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and I understand the not feeling awkward when you first got there, because I'm not from the Kingsport area either. So this was the first, like, getting to the house was the first time that I had ever stepped foot in that town. And I was scared, honestly, because, like, you know, I've been out here doing dope and stuff, but I was not like a gangster or hard or anything like that, you know. And so I'm thinking I'm going in here with these guys who are harder than me and have a harder experience than I do. And yeah, I was scared to start with, but like you said, man, it was pretty much immediately like pacified that fear, because it was a family that I walked into. You know, I was welcomed into a family immediately and was able to start establishing connections that were not based off of what they had that I wanted or what I had that they wanted, but just the genuine camaraderie of, you know, we're striving for a similar goal, and so we're going to help one another get to that goal without any expectation of what you can do for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked how we were all in this together. That was my thing in the beginning. Whenever I felt comfortable enough, you know, they were willing to help me with anything that I needed. And then every time I would reach out for help, someone would make sure, even if they couldn't help, that I was able to get help.
Yeah.
And it's good to know that, like you said, others are going through the same thing you are. And so y'all can relate on a lot of stuff. And the camaraderie in the house is awesome.
Yeah.
Like it is, like you said, like a family. And I really like that part, because growing up, I had no siblings. So I don't know what it's like to, you know, joke around and goof up with a bunch of people. And, you know, back when I used, the last thing you had was friends or family that, you know, you could do that with. You know what I mean? It's more of an isolated type event.
Sure.
So now, like, being able to relate with everybody, it's awesome. And doing it all completely sober is a whole nother experience. Like, that's the best part I like about it, is I can remember every goofy little incident that occurs in the house.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about it.
Well, how you've been there at sober living house for how long?
January 17th.
So you had a little over a month to fill it out. What's on the day-to-day, what do you feel like maybe your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge for day-to-day living in the sober living would probably be making sure that everybody, like, we hold each other accountable. So accountability is a huge thing within the program, which I understand. It's good to have a structure, a structured set of rules that need to be followed that hold you accountable. And sometimes I find myself coming short of holding others accountable, but it's a fear within myself. Like, I don't want to see you mess up and then tell you that you're doing this wrong and you get mad at me.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like if I wouldn't have said, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, maybe he would have talked to me today. Maybe we would have hung out. Or it's like a fear of losing that friendship.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I work with every day, is trying to hold others accountable, because I have that fear of losing that bond between me and that person.
Yeah.
So
You spoke about sort of the same thing in that arena. How did you combat your people pleasing, or just the fear of internal
Yeah.
confrontation?
So with that aspect, I had the same fear. It was a little bit different though. So for me, I had that jail mentality of I couldn't hold somebody accountable because then I'm a snitch, right? Or then, I'm that guy. But I heard, you've heard this saying, I don't know if you've heard it, but you can love someone to death. And so I had to constantly remind myself that if I'm not willing to hold this person accountable, regardless of how they may feel in the moment, when I do, I could literally be loving them to death. Like, that's something just as small as that can snowball into bigger things that are let go, and that can lead to them going back out and returning to this life. Versus if I open my mouth and just say something, they may be upset with me in the moment, but if they're truly there for the right reasons, they're going to appreciate the fact that I care about them enough to say something. So is there anything that, as you've been working the steps, is there anything that surprised you, or is there a time where you thought, man, this isn't going to stick, or this isn't going to work?
For me, like, doing the steps that I've done so far, like, every time I would complete a step, I feel this relief.
Yeah.
It's weird. I don't know what it is, but it's just a complete, overwhelming relief that I have completed something that I never thought I would complete or take on as a task to work towards. The only thing that's worried me about trying to get through the step that I'm on now is, like, wanting to open up.
Yeah.
To be honest about my troubles and my past. Like, they always tell you to try to, like, you don't want to think in the past, you want to try to look towards the future.
Yeah.
So it's hard to, look towards the future and be positive when you're trying to think about this past and all the terrible stuff you've done, and how that's going to work to your advantage to move towards the future.
Yeah.
So it is kind of scary to think about those and then to be honest about them.
Yeah.
Or to try to not, like, cover them up, so to speak.
Yeah.
That was the hard part for me.
Yeah.
Is trying to get through that.
And that was exactly the piece that I was thinking of, is, practicing that honesty in that step, and then the willingness to, because it's easy to, at least for me, it was easy to be honest when I'm writing it down on paper, because I've already done it, right? Like, I'm not writing down anything that's new. I already did these things. So that part went easy. It was cake for me to put it on paper. But then when I go to step 5, right, and I've got to be willing to share all these intimate details with another human being, it was definitely a struggle. And I think the biggest thing that I was extremely fortunate, and I tell guys, when I meet new guys or anything, you're suggested to get a sponsor, and then I tell anybody, you know, if you start working with a sponsor and you don't feel that connection, get a different sponsor. And so I was extremely fortunate in that the sponsor that I found and started with, like, I immediately felt a connection and the relatability, so that it was not so frightening. And then also he was very open about, like, sharing with me his experience first. Like, he told me some of the stuff that he had done in his life that was messed up, so that, you know, it took away that fear of, oh, maybe I'm the only one, or maybe, you know, I'm unique, or this is something that only I have done. He was really good about settling those fears and letting me know that, you know, we've all done the same things, just in different suits, and, you know.
What's your biggest fear at this point, like working with sponsor steps wise?
My biggest fear is just being judged by my past mistakes. I mean, knowing what I've done, if I was to truly, honestly, you know, sit down with someone and tell them my past, you know, would that make them view me differently than I am today?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that scares me to death.
Yeah. Well, no. So I didn't really have so much fear of that. Well, I did to start with before I actually started working with the sponsor. But then, like I said, he kind of abated those fears because he shared some of his past with me. So it kind of opened up that door and made it more tit for tat, in a sense that, oh, well, he's not going to have anything to hold over me now, because I'm carrying some of his baggage now too.
Yeah.
And I think that, like I said, that relatability and just, you know, having a sponsor that has walked a similar path and has done similar things to what we've done made it easier. You know, it was just that constant reminder of how can he judge me when he's done the same thing? And not just that, but having a sponsor that is truly living these things themselves, because if they're living the principles themselves, one of the principles is brotherly love. And so if they're truly living that principle, then they're not going to be judgmental, because if I'm being judgmental, I'm not practicing love. If I'm being judgmental, I'm ostracizing somebody or pushing them away. But if I'm practicing love, then I'm not going to judge them for anything. I'm going to love them right where they are, no matter what. So.
What do you think that fear represents? The fear of what other people think. This is for either of you.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just my character, I guess you could say. So, like, I want to be seen as someone that's honest and trustworthy, and, you know, just a good person. I want to be a good person to people. And if people see my past or hear about it, or, you know, my sponsor hears about it, then that tarnishes my record. You know what I mean? I don't feel like you're going to want to come to me for help if you've known what I've done in the past.
Yeah.
And so that's where my fear lies, is, would you want to still be my friend? Would you still come to me when you have problems for help? You know, if you've known what I've done. You know what I mean?
So I think that a good way of combating that is being able to separate the actions from the man. And so what I mean is, just because I've done bad things does not mean that I'm a bad person. It just means that I've done bad things. So if I can separate those acts and recognize that they're the past, and as long as I'm exhibiting different behavior today, then that's who I am today. It's irrelevant what I did in the past, because am I doing it today? That's all that I can really control, is what my next step is. I can't carry the burdens of what has happened in the past, and I can't make that the individual that I am. I'm only responsible for this moment. I mean, so my answer would probably be not anything, because I feel like if I would have had knowledge beforehand, I would have created preconceived notions of what it should be. and that would have hindered me from having the natural process of learning it in the moment.
Okay. So maybe Paul ask him, if you wouldn't mind, sir, how he handles his fears today.
Okay. So how is it that you handle your fears today when it comes to recovery and...
So if we're talking about, like, so for instance, the fear of relapsing, or well, just fears in general, it starts with acknowledging that it's okay to have a feeling, but that the feeling is not fact, and that you know, living with courage is being able to acknowledge that I have the fear and still working through it regardless of the fear being there, not letting the fear consume me. And when it comes to, you know, relapsing is an easy one because all I do is think about what I have in my life today. And, you know, when those thoughts pop up, it's like, would it really be worth giving up what is in my life today for that temporary high, that temporary feeling of relief? It's not worth it, especially when I remind myself of what it truly got me, because it wasn't relief, it was torment, it was misery, it was, you know, all the things that are bad. So I keep those things fresh in my mind as to what I could go back to. And that's why I think it's really important to stay active in the community, because then I get to see new people come in the program who are still maybe defeated when they come in. And I get to see that brokenness, and it reminds me of what I don't want to go back to.
Okay.